It's time that we have a discussion about homelessness. I see a lot of YouTubers, right, helping homeless people. And the thing about it is with what's going on in the United States right now, because COVID has brought out the humanity in a lot of people, and I think that's a beautiful thing. Where you need to be absolutely careful is when you film people in a state of homelessness and how you do so, because it can give off a certain vibe of you pity these people or you're guilt tripping people into giving them money when we really don't know their circumstances. Something I'm also going to say that's going to make a lot of people mad when they say, they're out on the street. We don't want to pass judgment. They didn't put themselves there, and people just make different decisions and they end there. The problem is there has to be some judgment on certain people who are living on the streets or who have chosen to. On the one hand, it's nice to feed people and to help people, because I mentioned it in one of my shorts recently. I'm going to say, for me, I can never be the person who of my own accord take a camera and go and film a person in that state. In part because I've bounced back and forth between shelters and hotels as a child. So because I was homeless twice before middle school, I understand homelessness. And therefore, when you understand it, there's only certain things you can't do. Now, this doesn't mean if you're not a news reporter that a homeless person won't end up in your footage, because anything that's done in the public is public. There is no expectation of privacy in public. I get that. But it doesn't give you the right to handle a person a certain way without their consent, because these are still people until we're talking about. Now, if you're doing this to stray cats or dogs because you want to get them adopted, that's a beautiful thing. When we're dealing with human beings who have a higher level of reasoning, you have to be careful about that. There are 3 types of people that are homeless that we're going to discuss right now. And the first one's going to be harsh. It's best that we have these discussions, because there's an increase in people helping people that mean well, but they're turning on cameras. And you have to know per individual why you're doing this. Okay, so let's get into the reasons. The first person who is on the street are the users. Years ago, someone in a conversation told me about a special that some news magazine was running. And if you know, news magazines are the people who do exposés and things, of a millionaire in the United States who was dressing like a homeless person and racking up money only to go back to his mansion and still live large. I forgot. I know which one it is. I'm not going to say because I can't verify that story. And how, to some degree, this at that time, that was late 90s, early 2000s, was more prevalent than people thought. Out here in Kitsap County, I can remember before I got my driver's license, I was 26 going on 27, because I got my driver's license at 27 because driving cars scared me up until the age of 27. Guy who owns the cab company decided he was going to drive one of his cabs and picked me up from base housing one day. And we're going on this famous road where quite a bit of homeless people at the time hung out. He was the second person that pointed at a guy standing there taking money and saying, "You know that piece of such and such right there?" He lives in a middle class neighborhood and admits that he's not broke, but he'll stand on the street and get all of this money. And people were giving it to him left and right. And he stood on that corner for like a year and a half, 2 years. Okay. So the actual cab driver was like, don't you ever give him a dime. He got in my cab one night and boasted about how he was ripping people off and getting free money and knew he could work. Okay. That's what the cabbie was telling me. Now, he was the second person. Now, the first person told me, I would say it was around Christmas of that same year, this same guy put up such a good act of pretending to be homeless that he was racking up during the Christmas season on that same corner out of sympathy. He boasted to a guy that I knew and was acquainted with back then that he was making on average $160 a day standing on that corner pretending to be poor. No one would ever tell me which nice neighborhood in our county he lived in, but this is what he was doing. Okay. My third and last anecdotal story, okay. Met a lady in San Diego and her daughter come up to me and she's like, well, I'm poor, and the girl looked so pitiful, right, that I gave her $20. I see these same people down in downtown San Diego like a few months later, and it dawned on me the look on the little girl's face. I said, this mother is hustling this daughter and pretending she's poor. And the woman chasing me down because she doesn't remember that she sent her daughter to ask me for money in the mall. You have to understand, I was gullible and naive back then, and coming from homelessness, I naturally assumed that everyone was, until I also met what was once a successful black man that ended up homeless in San Diego that worked for a newspaper, because San Diego had a newspaper that homeless people could sell to advocate for homeless to make a little money. And he was talking about his life decisions. I'll use that actually for point 2. Okay. But that was going to be my third anecdotal story. I'll use the San Diego guy for point number 2, because I'm winging it with this. The point is that Jesse Lee Peterson had covered this, and then there were some other outlets that covered, in which people admitted that they meandered to different states where people were given incentives to be on the street, and therefore they were taking the free money and incentives and living outside of a van and parking different places. And why go get a job when you can hustle being homeless? The reason I bring this first point up is that, as heartless as I sound right now, there are people who know how to look downtrodden, who know how to look poor, okay? And will take resources and money from people who actually need it. They actually do stuff like this. I know this isn't something y'all want to believe, but these type people exist. So that's your user. That's your first one, okay? They're hard to detect because they get their ducks in a row and their stories in a row. They can smell like it. They can look like it. And they can disappear so fast you'll never know. The second type person is a person that decisions in life got the best of them. They used too much. They became alcoholics. Drugs took over their life, and they pawned everything. These are the people that did not just didn't manage their money right. So basically they made bad decisions, but some of them didn't reasonably know that those bad decisions could put them on the street. And sometimes, like I said, the story from the first one, which is the second one, months later, that woman chases me down in the street in San Diego. I'm looking at her and she's wearing a long, brand new leather jacket. And at the time, I was pretty averse in leather jackets. It was a cold night in the gaslight lamp district of San Diego. And I looked at her matching boots, and it dawned on me, when the little girl looked sad, that this child is being forced to do this from a mother who likes to wear nice material things, and it bothered me. And I glared at her, and she just didn't know, because of course she'd hustled so many people, she didn't remember she met me in that mall. I was just another hustle to her. See, the reason that falls under category 2 is because that little girl looked exhausted and tired of playing that game. And whatever decisions in life that mother made, that child was paying for. That was the incident that let me know that some people fake it, or fake decisions in order to get free money. And some people, life just happened to them. They had a traumatic incident. They had some trauma. They had to run away from home because they were being raped or molested, or someone was threatening to unalive them if they told certain secrets. Those are the people I feel bad for. Because some people who run away from home, that's the reason. Now let's get to the third and final one that I've even noticed here where I live in Kitsap County. The one that ticks me off the most are the people who are priced out and forced onto the streets. Greedy landlords rationalizing why the cost went up, even with local artisans and local ways to offset those costs. Look, I know being a landlord is not easy, but the way that some of y'all are raising these rents is outrageous, okay? There are all kind of news specials. You all can Google it, proving that landlords work in cahoots to raise prices in certain areas, to overprice rent on purpose. This isn't something I'm making it up. So you're pricing people out or forcing them to pay. I know people now whose apartment rent here in Western Washington costs more than my house mortgage. It makes no sense once a month. See, the person who gets priced out gets my full sympathy, because you did all the right things. You worked several jobs. You pinched pennies. You did the best that you could. You adulted, and still society may as well have spat on you. Because you bust your butt, and you're still living out of your car and still being harangued. You can't park here, la, 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 and treat it as a pariah when you didn't do this to yourself. You got up and worked a legitimate job, or 2 or 3 or 4. You are a law-abiding citizen. You had no criminal record, or if you did have a past, you cleaned your life up. See, the reason I don't like that type of homelessness is because that's the person who did the right thing, and they still paid the price, because these landlords in certain areas are getting in cahoots behind the scenes and making it to where they can raise rent so high that it's miserable for you. Well, we have to offset cost, and we got this, that. No one's arguing, refuting that utilities like sewer and garbage are not expensive. No one's arguing that keeping up safety like smoke alarms, and I think it's little mini fire extinguishers, aren't pricey. We know those things cost money. Understand that when you became a landlord, some of that stuff you also signed up for. It's a whole different ball game if you're one of the ones getting in cahoots and forcing something out of someone because you think you are entitled to live it up. Real estate is always ebb and flow, no matter how much you get into it. So I don't condone people not paying their rent, but sometimes I'm starting to understand why they don't. So that's my 3 reasons for homelessness. The users, the ones who know they're not really homeless but play these silly games. The people with bad life decisions, whether it's drugs, alcohol, and they know no way out, mental illness like schizophrenia and stuff. And the ones who did the right things, the ones who are priced out and really literally cannot afford to pay any more than they already have, and can't work themselves to the bone or don't want to. Either way it goes, those of us who aren't homeless or have been in the past, you have to be careful of how you approach the situation. Because you'll need to do it if that's what you want to do without giving off this air of superiority or pity. At the end of the day, humans are people with feelings.